Ever wonder why every hip coffee shop you walk into, no matter where you are in the world, looks exactly the same? Or why every new viral song kind of sounds like it was engineered for the exact same mood? Well, welcome to this explainer on Filterworld, How Algorithms Flattened Culture, based on the really fascinating work by Kyle Chayka. Today, we're going to unravel a massive invisible mystery of our modern age, how silent, unseen mathematical equations came to completely dictate our physical spaces, our online habits, and, honestly, our personal tastes.
Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1. The mechanical illusion. To really wrap our heads around the tech dominating our screens today, we actually have to take a step back, way back, to an 18th century magic trick called the Mechanical Turk. Built in 1769 by Johann von Kempelen as a gift for the Habsburg Empress, this was a seemingly magical machine that could play and win a game of chess against a real human opponent. It was this massive wooden cabinet, absolutely packed with intricate clockwork gears, and sitting right on top was a humanoid figure moving the chess pieces. It was so incredibly impressive that it toured the world. It even famously defeated Benjamin Franklin and Napoleon Bonaparte. No way, right? But here's the massive catch. It was a total illusion. Those elaborate gears, they did absolutely nothing. Hidden inside that cabinet was an actual human chess expert, literally pulling levers and strings by candlelight to move the pieces. Now, observers at the time were pretty suspicious of this whole setup. The British eccentric Philip Thickness hit the nail on the head in 1784 when he wrote, "The automaton chess player is a man within a man. He bears a living soul within." And our source material notes that this mechanical Turk is just the absolute perfect metaphor for the algorithms we interact with today. We tend to think of algorithms as this highly advanced, totally autonomous artificial intelligence making objective, perfect choices. But in reality, they're really just a series of human decisions and human biases dressed up to look like autonomous technology operating at an impossibly massive scale.
All right, moving on to Section 2. Welcome to Filterworld. Fast forward to the early 21st century, and that mechanical illusion has evolved into a ghost that's basically haunting our daily digital lives. So the crucial point here is understanding the actual environment we're living inside of. The author coined the term Filterworld to describe this whole phenomenon. It's defined as the vast interlocking network of algorithms that influence our lives and dictate the distribution and consumption of culture. Whether we're talking about visual art, music, or literature, these automated recommendations mediate our entire relationship to culture. They act exactly like a photo filter, sifting what gets attention and subtly warping the appearance of things so they perfectly fit the specific structures and incentives of these digital platforms. You know, you might not always realize it, but you are experiencing the symptoms of Filterworld every single day. Let's look at some everyday phenomena shaped by platform biases. First, we've got stream bait, that muted, mid-tempo pop music perfectly optimized to just fade effortlessly into the background of your Spotify playlist. Then there's Instagram face. You've definitely seen this, a distinct homogeneous look with those ambiguously ethnic features, cat-like eyes, and cartoonish lashes heavily promoted by beauty filters. Or how about the TikTok voice, that rushed, monotone influencer drawl we all instantly recognize now? Or remember the Amazon coat? That viral, kind of lumpy Orale puffer jacket that algorithmically took over winter wardrobes a few years back. The text argues that these aren't just random organic trends that sprouted up. They're highly replicable pieces of culture directly manufactured by the algorithmic drive to grab and hold your attention. And this algorithmification, it doesn't just stay trapped inside our phones. It forcefully spills out into the physical world. The author shares this really striking anecdote. He noticed that whether he was traveling in Kyoto, Berlin, or Los Angeles, he kept walking into the exact same cafe aesthetic. You know the one, white subway tiles lining the walls, reclaimed wood tables, and hanging pendant lamps fitted with those warm Addison bulbs. This strict sameness all across the globe is driven by platforms like Instagram and Yelp. The algorithms reward a specific, visually pleasing aesthetic with likes and visibility. So physical spaces around the world literally adapt to fit that exact digital mold, just to survive and thrive. It's wild. This international harmonization of tastes brings us to a really powerful quote highlighted in the text from theorist Gayatri Spivak. She says, "Globalization takes place only in capital and data. Everything else is damage control." The text argues that this global aesthetic is largely driven by a handful of Western tech platforms, mostly based out of Silicon Valley, who are essentially exporting a totally homogenous culture.
Billions of users worldwide are adapting to this exact same algorithmic standard, treating local, unique diversity as just damage control in the wake of all this data expansion. Now, what's really interesting about this next part, Section 3, the flattening of culture. So how did we actually arrive at this state of cultural flattening? Like, how did we lose all our rough, unique edges and end up in this world of slick sameness? Well, it all comes down to the underlying architecture of our social feeds. Think back to the early 2010s, if you can. Feeds on networks like Twitter or Instagram were chronological. Human gatekeepers, meaning you, your friends, the specific editors you actively followed, curated what you saw, strictly in the order it was published. Simple, right? But as these platforms grew, they made a massive, deliberate shift to algorithmic feeds. And let's be clear, the motivation wasn't necessarily to make the app a better experience for you. It was for profit. Algorithmic feeds are designed purely to maximize the time you spend endlessly scrolling, to aggressively track your data, and ultimately to sell your highly valuable attention to advertisers. The absolute watershed moment in this transition came pretty recently, driven by one staggering number, 1.5 billion. That is the insane user milestone TikTok reached in less than 5 years. TikTok's absolute genius was its For You page, a feed that was almost entirely algorithmic right from the jump. It totally bypassed human curation in favor of whatever the machine predicted would forcefully hold your gaze. And it was so relentlessly effective that it essentially forced every single other major competitor, from Instagram to Twitter, to abandon their old chronological ways and adopt fully algorithmic feeds just to keep up. Let's move to and see how this builds Section 4, the ancient algorithm. To truly demystify this invisible force dictating our lives, we really need to realize that the concept of an algorithm is actually quite ancient. I mean, we're talking way back. In 1800 BCE, ancient Babylonians were writing out step-by-step calculations on clay cuneiform tablets just to figure out the dimensions of water cisterns. Around 300 BCE, the Greek philosopher Euclid recorded an algorithm for finding the greatest common divisor. And then in 820 CE, the Persian scholar Al-Khwarizmi wrote groundbreaking text on calculating using Hindu numerals. These were all, by definition, algorithms. Because at its absolute core, an algorithm is simply an equation, a formula, or a repeatable set of rules that produces a desired result. That's it. It's not dark magic. It's just a scalable procedure. In fact, those ancient Babylonians used to end the mathematical explanations on their clay tablets with the exact phrase, "This is the procedure." I love that. That is brilliant in its absolute simplicity, and honestly, it perfectly summarizes what Silicon Valley engineers are still building today. This is the procedure. And the very word we use today has deeply human historical roots. As the source details, when the Persian scholar Al-Khwarizmi's brilliant mathematical work was translated into Latin in the 12th century, his name was translated as algorithmi. From there, the term algorithmus was born to describe mathematical procedures, which eventually, over time, evolved into the English word we use today, algorithm. And this brilliantly illustrates our final point, Section 5, a prophecy of presets. This ancient math connects directly to early computing, and eventually right to the flattened culture we consume today. Back in the 19th century, computer pioneer Ada Lovelace saw exactly where all of this could lead. While she was writing algorithms for Charles Babbage's early mechanical computer, the analytical engine, she realized the machine could process much more than just numbers. In 1843, she boldly predicted the engine might compose elaborate and scientific pieces of music of any degree of complexity or extent. Think about that. Over 180 years ago, Lovelace foresaw that a machine following repeatable rules could eventually generate and mold human culture. Which brings us to a really powerful closing metaphor from the text, drawn from a 1980 Japanese novel called Somehow Crystal by Yasuo Tanaka. In the book, the author compares two distinct ways of interacting with culture. On one hand, you have the friction of manually turning a radio dial, pushing through the static to discover a station on your own. On the other hand, you have the ease of simply hitting a convenient pre-programmed preset button. The text argues that Filterworld is the ultimate culture of the preset button. It's incredibly convenient, absolutely, but it robs us of what the novel wonderfully calls the maniac fun of manual tuning, the friction, the surprise, and the sheer creativity of discovering something entirely on our own. So I want to leave you with a critical question to consider about your own daily digital consumption. Have we surrendered the maniac fun of human curiosity to the convenient presets of Filterworld? As we scroll endlessly through algorithmic feeds designed to perfectly soothe and predict our every single desire, we really have to pause and ask ourselves what we might be losing in the process. It's a truly fascinating look at the hidden architecture of our modern tastes. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Honestly, next time you walk into a generic coffee shop, you'll know exactly why it looks that way. Keep questioning your feeds, and I'll catch you next time.